Hello friends, I'm here to talk to you guys more about sleep today. Last time I recorded a few episodes on sleep, mainly about how sleep seems to epidemiologically affect the disease. The reason why I recorded those videos is I wanted to show you guys how important sleep really was and how pervasive the effects of bad sleep were on human health. Today I'm going to continue talking about how sleep affects human health before I get to topics of how our behavior affects our sleep. So specifically, I'm going to talk particularly about drug use, about light, and about temperature. And then I'm going to give you a final video on a sort of a synopsis on how to optimize your sleep. But before we get there, I want to talk to you guys about two more things, which are how sleep affects cognition. And in the next video, I'm going to talk to you guys about how sleep affects personality and behavior. So first, we're going to talk about cognition. And what I mean by cognition is how sleep affects how the brain works. And really, when it comes down to this, first of all, before I talk to you guys more about that, let me tell you something. We talk so much about how intoxicated driving is dangerous. And you know, it's a crime to drive intoxicated in the US. To any significant degree. You'd be arrested, you can get you do it a couple of times, you get a felony, you'd be a criminal. But undersleeping and driving is not a crime. You know, you can stay awake all night and drive the next day, and a police officer can pull you over. You could be swerving, you could be not hitting your hitting your brakes at lights, and you will not be arrested. You will not get a felony, nothing will happen to you. But undersleeping causes more deaths than intoxicated driving. Because what happens is when intoxicated drivers drive, when they drive, what happens is that intoxicated drivers respond slower to changes in the road. Whereas underslept people actually have what are called micro sleeps, which means their eyes, almost close for a second and their brain actually shuts off. So instead of responding slower, they actually don't respond at all. And this is much more dangerous than responding slower. And to be honest, I have to talk to you guys from personal experience as well. The reason why I'm so obsessed with sleep is because most of my life, especially in my youth, I really thought that sleep was like, I thought it was something like death. Like you're not alive during the time you're sleeping, you're missing out on life. I thought most people spend a third of their life sleeping. So if I could spend less than a third, I'm going to live more than them. I had that kind of mentality, and this caused me to undersleep significantly. I mean, even from my adolescence. I was sleeping like 4 hours a day when I was 14 or 15 years old. And when I first began driving at around 16, I was still undersleeping, and I recall many times, thankfully I didn't have an accident from this. Although I did have an accident once because I went squatting. I used to squat heavy weights when I was an adolescent, or when I was 16 or so. And one day I went squatting and my legs were so tired, and my body was so tired, I think from the hormone release and stuff like that, that I was at a stop, or not at a stop, but cars in front of me were slowing down, and I physically could not make my leg press the brake button, and so I actually hit the car in front of me. But thankfully it never happened to me from undersleeping, but I nearly did cause accidents several times, mainly at traffic lights. I would notice that I would fall asleep at a traffic light and let go of the brake, and then I would wake up a second later. These were the micro sleeps. Thankfully, just by luck, nothing happened. But so I know how serious this is myself, and the reason why I tell you guys this is just to understand sleep has such an effect on brain function, and it's not just about micro sleeping. When we talk about cognitive function and sleep, what we mostly know about so far from the research of sleep scientists is about how sleep affects memory. We don't know as much about other aspects of cognition, mainly because the field is so new. But we do know how it affects memory to some degree. So let me give you guys an overview of that. To begin with, just to remember, there are two kinds of sleep, right? There is non-REM sleep, which means non-rapid eye movement sleep, which is what happens. Remember, you have sleep cycles throughout the night. On average, if you sleep a good amount, you have 5 cycles lasting an hour and a half throughout the night. The first part of those cycles is non-REM sleep, which is the 4 stages. The last 2 stages are called deep sleep. And then the second part of that is called REM sleep. That's rapid eye movement sleep, when your body is tranquilized and your brain is dreaming, right? And in the first half of the night, you have a higher portion of non-REM sleep, and in the second half of the night, you have a higher portion of REM sleep, or dream sleep. So let's talk about how memory is affected by both non-REM sleep and REM sleep. So in particular, I want to tell you guys that non-REM sleep seems to be where memories are. First of all, non-REM sleep the night before you learn something is important because it seems to allow your brain the capacity to store the memories that you're getting throughout the day in the hippocampus. So if you're underslept the day before you want to learn something important, you're not going to be as able to store it in the first place in your brain. But then non-REM sleep is also important, and it seems the most critical for taking these memories that you develop during the day and storing them into your long-term memory. So what happens specifically is in non-REM sleep, particularly in stages 3 and 4, your brain stores your memories or shifts them from the hippocampus, which is the main memory center. And also remember from another video, one of the only two places of the brain that continue to get new neurons into adulthood. Your brain takes the memories from there and stores them into your cortex, so that they can be used and connected with different pieces of information throughout your brain. So what happens basically is, during your day, as you learn something, you make your own intuitive connections between what you've learned consciously, between what you've learned and other things that you know about. And then in deep sleep, the stages 3 and 4 of non-REM sleep, the first half of the sleep cycle, your brain takes these memories and connects them to different parts of your brain and shifts the memories from your hippocampus to your cortex, right? So what we know, for example, is that if there are a bunch of studies on this. I'm not going to go into the details of many of them right now, but just to give you a highlight, and I know this from personal experience so much. I pulled so many one-nighters. I went to school for 6 years, an excessive amount of time. Of course, I got 2 degrees from it, but I was doing a lot of work. I was often taking, 7 courses in a semester and pushing myself a lot. And I had this attitude that sleep was not useful for me, right? So what I used to do sometimes is I used to spend a whole night not sleeping. I used to do this pretty frequently. And I would notice that my cognition was much poorer on the exam day. But I was rebellious, I guess, against my nature, and I was just trying to do my best. But what we know from studies is that students who don't sleep the night before a test, what they learned the day before, they recall about 40% of it compared to the 100% of the people that slept. So this is a huge difference. This is good from going to an A to a D. It's a huge difference. Of course, this doesn't mean if you haven't learned anything the whole semester that you could just sleep and you'll be fine. So it depends on how well you've been studying. But the point is, shows you how pervasive that sleep is. So important for taking that learning and putting it into a place of the brain where you can use it. So if you don't sleep the night before, and it's as if you just learned it earlier in the day and then being tested at night, you don't learn much. In this case, you're actually doing an overnight, all-nighter, but you don't learn much. You need the sleep to set those memories into place so that you can access them properly. So another thing I want to talk to you guys about is REM sleep. So REM sleep is not really very well understood compared to non-REM sleep. And in non-REM sleep, stages 1 and 2, they're sort of introductory stages. Most of the research is about stages 3 and 4, which are called deep sleep, when the brain is the least active that it is ever during life. It's producing delta waves, which are the slowest waves we experience. So REM sleep is less understood, but it seems very important for cognition as well. And we don't know exactly what's going. We basically don't know why we dream. We don't really know why. Actually, before I talk about this, let me add another thing, which is that in non-REM sleep, when your brain is in these delta waves, your brain is moving these memories from your hippocampus into your cortex, your brain is also replaying the events of your day, the things that you learned. And we know this because of, there are some studies on rats, where rats were taken through a maze. And what they did was they did fMRIs, or not fMRIs, but they scanned the rats' brains to see how how their brains lit up electromagnetically as they move through the maze. And what they notice is that when the rats later sleep, their brains light up in exactly the same way as they did during the actual activity of the day, which is the memory, the learning part, but much faster. So 10 to 20 times faster. So it's like your brain is like replaying the same memories, although it's your brain is not as active, it's on the delta wave sleep, but it's replaying them really quickly. So this is pretty interesting. But getting back to REM sleep. So with REM sleep, what's happening though is your brain is not, we don't know why exactly we dream, but we have some theories from the sleep scientists. And as everyone knows, dreams are quite bizarre. And what seems to happen is during deep sleep, your brain is actually connecting things, moving the memories around through your brain. And during your day, you're consciously connecting memories in a logical or intuitive way. Whereas in REM sleep, it seems like we're doing a process that is very useful, which is trying to connect these memories sort of bizarrely or randomly or not in an organized fashion to different parts of our memories or our knowledge. So this is why, sometimes you get bizarre dreams at night. But some of these dreams, while they may not seem useful, they can be quite useful, and they may impact, these conscious dreams may impact your subconscious connection of your memories to other parts of your brain, making you more functional. So this is sort of the theory on how REM sleep does this. You dream, and the things that you've learned, by the way, of course, you don't remember all your dreams, right? So you're having 5 cycles of dreams during the night on average. The first few are short, and the last ones sometimes are long. You're very rarely remembering 5 different assortments of dreams, right? So we're making connections that we're not really remembering consciously, but they do exist, and we know that because logically, sometimes we see something in life and we notice, oh, we thought I had a dream about this, but you didn't remember the dream before that. So you do have this connection in your brain. So it's making these interesting connections that seem to be very useful. And I'll tell you from personal experience, I used to be very interested in mathematics when I was an undergraduate. And I noticed there was a wonderful book, I want to recall the name, but I don't recall it right now. Potentially because of the statin I'm taking, which seems to be affecting my memory slightly. But anyway, there's a wonderful book that I used to read that had like short biographies of various mathematicians. And I was really surprised when I read the book to see how many mathematicians found their great discoveries during dreams. And it seems to be a common thread in the field of mathematics. And while I was thinking about this and researching how dreams affect memories, I realized that this is pervasive not only in the field of mathematics, but in a variety of fields. So for example, I recall from that book that, there's an Indian mathematician. His name was Ramanuja. He was a gifted, like really, really gifted Indian gentleman from colonial days in India who was brought to the UK because of his mathematical genius. He was a prodigy. In his lifetime, which was very short, he produced over 4,000 proofs, if I remember correctly. And, he used to say that in his dreams, a Hindu goddess would come to him and literally tell him what the proofs, how to formulate the proofs for his ideas were. He would actually get direct dictation from this Hindu goddess in his dreams. And he's not the only one who had similar effects. Like, for example, the periodic table, which was created by Mendeleev, was actually, he dreamt the formulation of the periodic table. Descartes, for example, who created the scientific method, also dreamt how to produce the formulation of the scientific method. Banting, who discovered the use of insulin for diabetes, actually his mother had diabetes and she died from it. And one night he actually dreamt that he had a dream in which he was tying off the pancreas of a dog to see how the difference in the insulin and the blood sugar would go about. He had this dream, he woke up the next morning, he decided to do the experiment, and here he noticed how insulin was affecting blood sugar. And this is how insulin came about to be used for the treatment of diabetes. There's so many other examples, like the father of neuroscience, Lucie, who received, I think, a Nobel Prize for this work. He had an idea that neurons were communicating through synapses in a chemical fashion, but he couldn't prove it. And he actually had a dream twice, actually, if I recall. He had a dream once telling him like sort of how they were communicating, and then what happened is he woke up and quickly scribbled down some notes on the dream, and unfortunately his handwriting was so bad that the next day he couldn't tell what he had written down. So then he went to sleep upset the same night, and then dreamt about it again, and then woke up the second day and then formulated his explanation for how his theory for how neurons were communicating, which turned out to be true, and then he won a Nobel Prize. And this is also exists in physics as well. Like Niels Bohr came up with his description of how the interior of atoms with the nucleus and all the electrons, how they were formulated from a dream. And Einstein also came up with the theory of relativity coming from a dream that he had of himself skiing. Something to do with the light while they were skiing. I don't recall the details. But these are just some examples. I mean, this is pervasive across the sciences. You find that people have dreams that they consciously recall that lead them to discoveries. And this is only what they consciously recall. Forget about the dreams that they don't remember, that create connections in their brain that they then later use to come up with their discoveries. And this is why I want to draw you guys' attention to, I'm not going to talk about this fully now. I'll do another video on drug use and sleep. But remember, you guys will know that drug use in the majority limits your REM sleep, so your dream sleep. So a lot of the times, and I'm not just talking about recreational drugs, I'm talking about sleeping drugs too, and antipsychotics. So a lot of these drugs, what they'll do is they'll tranquilize you. They're hypnotic tranquilizers. So they put you to sleep, and you see with many of them, not all of them, but many of them, you have good deep sleep, which is the stages 3 and 4 of non-REM sleep. So you may be storing your memories traditionally, moving them from your hippocampus to your cortex traditionally, but you're not experiencing this magic of dreaming. So for example, the most obvious case of this, which I think I made a post about on Instagram, and someone, there's a fellow, I don't know his name, but he comments a lot on my Instagram. He's an interesting guy. He's like I guess like a hippie in his maybe 50s or so in age, and he seems to consume marijuana constantly, like several other people I know that are on YouTube. And he doesn't dream. So I think I mentioned that marijuana was dangerous because you don't dream, and because you don't dream, you're severely impacting the quality of your sleep and your cognition. And he was like, no, I sleep fine, I sleep great. Well, but I don't dream at all, but I sleep great. Well, the thing is, think about it this way. I'm sure not everybody is trying to function on the cognitive level of a scientist like, Einstein or Bohr or Ramanuja or these kind of people. But you are trying to function in a cognitive manner yourself in some way. You do care about your intelligence and your ability to understand the world and your ability to think, because really, that's your soul. Your soul, whatever we say about the soul, which, materialists may say the soul doesn't exist, but the concept of the soul, it applies to the brain as well. And if your brain is not able to function right because you're not getting any dream sleep, because you're ruining it with a drug, you have a pervasive effect on your intelligence throughout your life. So guys, I hope that you found this useful. This is just one part in the series on sleep. Next, I'm going to talk about how sleep affects the personality, which I found fascinating as well. So look forward to that tomorrow. I hope you guys have a fruitful and mindful day, and thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.